which the AFC and others claim to represent. The PPP has every confidence that our young people will not be influenced by the empty rhetoric and delusional politics aimed at brainwashing our young people into false sense of security. The PPP is of the view that the future of this country is dependent largely on our diverse people working together for the common good through broad consensus of issues of national importance. Indeed, the party has always embraced political and ideological pluralism and inclusive governance in which every Guyanese can become meaningfully involved in the process of national development. Simply pontificating about national unity, as the opposition is seeking to do, is but placing roadblocks to major developmental projects and blackmailing the countries internationally. This cannot embrace the national good and can only have a polarizing effect in our quest for national reconciliation and united and prosperous Guyana. The party wishes to reiterate that it is fully committed to a government of national unity and will do everything within its power to bring together the diverse peoples of Guyana in order to harness their collective energies towards the realization of our national motto, one people, one nation, one destiny. The party calls on the Guyanese people to be vigilant and not to allow themselves to be hoodwinked by opposition elements who try to seduce them into all manner of promises, but which they know fully they lack the capacity to deliver. As a mature political party, the PPP is fully committed to the cause of a Guyana in which there is room for every Guyanese, whether individually or through their representative organizations, to become a part of a governance process. The final statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party is deeply concerned over the fact that millions of people globally continue to die annually due to lack of food, not to mention the tens of millions more who suffer from severe malnutrition, despite a commitment made by the international community to reduce world hunger by half by the year 2050. According to information released by the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, there are some 805 million people in the world today who do not have enough food to live healthily and productive lives. The party is convinced that there is more than enough food to feed every man, woman, and child, but a significant amount of that food is lost by way of waste, overconsumption, and a highly skewed distribution system which favor the haves at the expense of the have-nots. Despite limited success in terms of reducing hunger globally, there are far too many more mouths to feed, the vast majority of who are found in the underdeveloped world. It would appear that a fundamental Millennium Development Goal, MDG, of reducing world hunger by half by the year 2015 will not be met, not because the resources are not there, but because the political will by the rich countries to provide the necessary technical and financial assistance is woefully lacking. The global food shortage is all the more unfortunate given rapid improvements in crop yields through research and development, which has greatly increased crop production and productivity. The PPP also wishes to call on the international community to ensure that there is a level playing field which will allow for developing countries to compete on an even basis in terms of market access and fair prices for agricultural products. In addition, there should be an end to the huge agricultural subsidies to farmers in the developed world, which puts them at relatively advantageous position in terms of market share and competitiveness. Many of the developing countries continue to suffer from heavy balance of payment difficulties due to the high prices of imported manufactured products and low prices for the agricultural products. In this regard, the party wishes to commend the PBPC administration for the progress it has made over the years in terms of agricultural expansion, especially in the area of non-traditional exports, which is further boosted by its Grow More Food program, which together has positively impacted on the country's food security. Indeed, our potential for becoming the breadbasket of the Caribbean is once again being realized. The party wishes to commend the government for providing meal supplements to our school children, particularly in the far-flung and hinterland communities, which have impacted positively on the nutritional status of our children, in addition to boosting school attendance. It is indeed laudable that the government has taken a decision to continue the school feeding program despite the withdrawal of such support by the World Food Program several years ago. The PPP takes this opportunity to call on the developed countries to honor a United Nations commitment made over a decade ago to increase their aid contribution to the developing world. As pointed out by Dr. Chedi Jagan, the resources to eliminate poverty and hunger are there, but what is lacking is the political will by the rich countries to make that a reality. End of quote. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. And now we're looking for questioning. Dennis.
Mr. Roby sir, could you say what should be the governance model for any form of inclusive or shared governance as the party industry?
What should be the governance model?
Yeah, what should be the model that should be used?
Well, if you read the party's program that was adopted some years ago, you will find that our model is based on what we describe as a national democracy, a national democratic model of governance. And the national democratic model of governance, we consider that we are currently going through a period of national democracy. Every country, through a process of national or natural evolution, passes through certain stages. So we consider that at this stage of our socio-economic development, we're now experiencing this process of national democracy. Now obviously, the process of national democracy can only fulfill its full potential if all the political and social forces come to the table to determine the role which they would wish to play in this process of national democracy. Clearly, this has happened, albeit in a halting way, over the years. The first manifestation of this was when the national strategy was drawn up and was presented in the Parliament. The National Development Strategy was formulated and presented in the Parliament and adopted. It seems to me that that was one of the highest points of our national development process. So in terms of models, there are various models which are being touted on this question. The PBP's model is to be, it's reflected in our program for national democracy, and I believe, as we said the last time, this has to be built, fundamentally speaking, on the question of trust. You cannot build a model in an atmosphere that is polluted with a high degree of mistrust or distrust. I have noted since the last elections where, for example, the opposition has targeted every single developmental initiative this government has taken. And in addition to that, has shut down, not only targeted, but has even shut down many of these projects. Not to mention the sniping that takes place from time to time in respect of issues such as corruption, etc., etc. Now, the question, therefore, that ought to be asked, and not in a rhetorical sense, is how, in such a charged atmosphere, can trust be actually be germinated when all of this is happening? This is and it cannot happen overnight. It's either the opposition wipes the slate clean and determine what is the model that they would wish to have or they would wish to envisage, and put that model on the table. But as far as I could see, I haven't seen any model coming from the opposition, just a whole host of platitudes, empty rhetoric, and nothing that one could say that could be used as a model that could be linked to what the People's Progressive Party has written down in its program for a national democracy.
Mr. Wood, your follow-up. So should no party win a clear majority in the next elections, perhaps even with a reduced number of seats across the board, do you think that will create an environment for some form of shared governance?
That might very well be a worst case scenario. But we as politicians, we are supreme optimists. We are not focusing on that situation. We are focusing on a situation where the People's Progressive Party would regain its majority in the parliament. Every political party has to set its goals and its ambitions. Its political goals, its political ambitions. And our political goal, as well as our political ambition, if we to call it electoral ambition, is fundamentally speaking to regain our one-seat majority in the parliament. I would assume that for the opposition, their electoral ambition is to win more seats in the parliament and to win the executive office. So I'm afraid that, we in the PPP are supreme optimists, and we are looking to the future with great optimism in respect to representation in the National Assembly and holding the seat on Chief Chandrapal Avenue.
Madam, quick, sir. National unity, national democracy. It is always said that local government is crucial to that, where the people at the base have their own thing. But the government doesn't seem inclined, one, to support local government elections. You're attacking the very city council, the heart of the city, when it comes to governance, although you have members on the table. So how do you expect the society to have this trust that you talk about for this national unity?
Well, I don't think we're attacking the city council without any justification. I don't think we're attacking the city council. This is all in the nature of politics and in democracy. If an institution fails to fulfill its mandate, it has to come under public scrutiny and criticism. In the same way, if a government ministry fails, it would come under criticism and scrutiny from the media and the opposition. So one man's meat is another man's poison, as you would probably know. So I would say that all the criticism that have been leveled against the city council, which is supposed to be the symbol of what ought to happen, good governance in a municipality such as Georgetown, I think are fully justified. That place has become totally embroiled in politics, and the unmasking of the political actors behind what is unfolding at City Council has obviously led to where we are today, because they would like to have full control of the resources at the City Council without any accountability whatsoever. Now, if you're to move into the wider dispensation in the body politic of the country, well, obviously, the opposition is not satisfied with having lost the elections over the years. And they are working, in their view, to the best of their ability to correct that situation. In those circumstances, obviously, the People's Progressive Party, as a political party, must keep an eye on the opposition politics as the opposition keeps an eye on our politics. And in a democracy, these political maneuvering, these political issues will obviously always come to the fore because, as we know, Guyana, as far as I'm concerned, is a highly politicized society. And politics has always played a major role in determining the way forward in Guyana. So attacks will come, attacks will go. Attacks will come fast and furious, both from the government and the opposition. And that's the nature of the democracy in which we live.
Next.
So first on the statement, your last statement spoke about hunger and you
The last statement,
spoke about hunger.
oh,
Hunger. And you lamented a lot on world hunger and the state of these other countries.
but
what the
I didn't stop at speaking for hunger. I spoke about hunger for food. One can hunger for many other things.
Okay, you spoke about hunger for food, Mr. Rowe.
Okay.
Any other specifications?
No, I'm
Great.
just
Now, moving
sticking to.
I want to know, what about hunger in Guyana? What are the levels of hunger in Guyana? Because you spoke extensively about other jurisdictions in the world, right?
Uh-huh.
What are the levels of hunger in Guyana? First part of the question. And secondly, the PPP, you often separate the PPP from the government. You spoke about what the Ministry of Agriculture is doing to address hunger in the Grow More Food campaign. What is the PPP as a party doing about hunger with such concerns that you have?
Well, I think if you move around the country, if you go particularly in the Amerindian areas, in the areas outside of Georgetown, and even in Georgetown, you ask people, you know, what kind of initiatives the government has taken to address hunger. Obviously, food production is one of the key factors. There's an abundance of rice. There's no shortage of rice, which is our staple food in Guyana. There's no shortage of flour, as in the days of yore when flour had to be imported from Suriname and smuggled into the country. There's no shortage of bread. And you go into the supermarkets, you know, there's almost everything that is there. Now, of course, for affordability is another question. But in any society, there will always have people who can afford a certain things and who cannot afford a certain purchasing of certain commodities as well. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think that Guyana has surfaced on any international fora as a country where starvation is rampant. And the government has done, in cases where, for example, there have been flooding in the interior areas and food needed to be distributed and sent in to avoid any situation that might harm the population, we have reacted quite readily and speedily to those situations. So I would think that, generally speaking, the government, yeah. So I think that, you know, hunger doesn't seem to be a major problem in Guyana as far as I'm concerned. And when you look at the initiatives which the government takes from time to time, it is obviously a non-issue here.
And the PPP? What about the initiatives that you take?
Well, the PPP, as you know, would seek to influence the policies of the government. The PPP has no resources. We don't receive budgetary resources. We do fundraising activities from poor people. But the strength of the party has to do with being on the ground, listening to what the people are saying, receiving information, and passing it over to the government so that the government can use its resources to address those problems. That's where our strength is.
Okay, can I move off the statement?
No, not yet, don't go yet. On the same statement, you talk about sniping, about corruption and all of this. And your Ministry of Home Affairs launched a program, I paid a bribe today or something like that.
No, I paid a bribe website.
Or paid a, good. How is corruption reflected on that website?
Well, I think anybody could visit the website.
No, you tell me.
Well, I could tell you what you would know. But from the reports I receive, you have corruption manifested, for example, mainly with traffic ranks on the road. at the Transport and Harbors Department, at the wharves, at the stellings, you know, priority crossings, lining up of trucks, and who puts which truck where and things like that. Money is passing. Then there's some of the GRA, you know, at a lower level. So many of these manifestations of corruption that appears on the I Pay the Buy website is reflected in respect of corruption at the lower level of government agencies and departments. Somebody had to pay a bribe to get something, some service provided at a lower level and things like that. So that's where I would see that happening. And as I said, whenever those instances, occurrences would appear on the website, our staff that is monitoring it on a regular basis would extract the information and pass it on to the relevant government agency and department for them to take whatever action they deem appropriate. And it is left at that.
We don't know the results.
We don't necessarily worry ourselves with the results. No.
Yes.
Statement?
You wanted to ask a follow-up question?
No.
Dennis,
On
on
the statement, on the statement.
Yeah.
Because Minister Roy, going back to my earlier question,
Mhm.
sir, you talked about trust and the nature of the Guyanese environment, but how do you reconcile or rationalize that view with the fact that there have been power sharing models in countries where there have been great tensions, even violence, for example, Kenya. And secondly, sir, if the PP were to regain its parliamentary majority in the next elections, would the party be taking a different approach to what it terms as a governance model that includes all stakeholders or players in society, or would you be still open to some form of executive power sharing?
You seem to be a very keen fan of a columnist that appears every Sunday in the Starbuck News.
No, sir, I'm asking the questions of my own accord.
I never said you're not. I simply
I'm not
said,
influenced by any other actor in the society.
nor are you a fan.
No, I don't have a fan, neither am I a fan.
Okay, but you have a Facebook page though.
I don't
Right.
follow it regularly. But anyway,
I see.
it's your role to answer the question.
Well, you know, I read recently where there's been some pontificating on this question of power sharing formulas. And one statement that struck me was a statement to the effect that we do not seem to know what is happening on the ground, and we are misreading the mood of the people. In reflecting on those statements, it occurred to me that there are some in our society who appear to be, or I wouldn't, let me withdraw that word, who are very prolific writers on these questions. You, as far as I'm concerned, you cannot determine the moods of people by reading what the people say, or by reading the daily newspapers, or watching at regular TV programs, or by making a phone call to one person from time to time, or following what is on Facebook accounts. I don't support those as a medium for understanding the mood of people. I have learned over the years in politics, if you really want to know the mood of people, you better get down on the ground, walk the villages and the communities, sit down at a bottom house, sit down on a back step, sit down on someone's hammock, and rap with the people on the ground. That is something that has to be done in a painstaking manner. That is the only way you can actually tell the mood of the people. But I don't think that the way some people tend to interpret the mood of the people and what the people really want is by sitting in their air-conditioned offices and using their computers, reading the newspapers, making a few phone calls here and there, and then coming to the conclusion, this is what the mood of the people are. Well, you know, political animals tend to read the mood differently. They go down on the ground. We're not armchair, you know, politicians. Speaking for the PPP, we are always on the ground. And that's how we assess the mood of people. That's how we assess it. That's the nature of our work. So, the long and short of the answer to your question, Mr. Cabral, is, you know, right now, the mood of the people is that they want one of the two elections. Whichever one we say we're going for, they will follow us. We can influence our supporters and we can influence beyond our supporters. And as I said last week, the move to the east and the move to the west continues. I think the AFC better prepare themselves for a major fallout politically, because I don't get the impression that the APNU is moving in the direction of supporting the no confidence motion. And if the APNU withdraws their support for the AFC's no confidence motion, well, you know what we're heading for. So it's not really what the PPP wants any longer now. It's what the AFC wants. It's what the AFC wants. So it would seem to me that the listening to what is reported in respect to the public meetings that are being held by the APNU, they are not pushing for the no confidence motion. Understand they're saying it's not their motion, it's the AFC motion. So the AFC will have to decide at some point in time whether they withdraw that motion or whether they're pushing for it in a situation where the APNU seems to be looking in another direction. The handwriting is on the wall.
Mr. Louis, my questions are grounded in your reference to some form of governance model, and therefore I believe my question still stands as regards one environment. Say Kenya, you're talking about the need for trust in Guyana, and also what could necessarily be the party support.
Mr. Cabral.
A parliamentary majority.
Mr. Cabral, I'm sure you will appreciate that in terms of political science, any student of and I don't mean to, you know, to denigrate anyone here this morning. Any student of political science will tell you that any model, there's no one-size-fits-all model. And any model of any kind of paradigm that you're seeking to establish must be examined in the context of the national peculiarities, the customs and the mores of that particular country. There's no way you can, as the old people would say, heist up or lift one model from another country and impose it on the other country. Every country has its own national peculiarities. Guyana is one of them, like all the countries of the world. So there's no one-size-fits-all. Whatever happens in Guyana will come through a process of natural political evolution, and eventually the people will be the ones to determine that. The people will be the ones to determine that. Of course, the politicians will play a role, but it's the broad masses of the Guyanese people that will eventually determine what happens in terms of the future makeup of our democracy and our governance structures. Let us not, run ahead of ourselves.
Next.
I'm sorry, I did that before. Mr. Rowley, there are calls on the table for two elections, local government elections and general elections. But you said earlier that the people want.
Who is making that call? For two
let's go
elections?
step by step. The AFC has a motion, they place a motion, they table a motion in the National Assembly for, that will see, in 90 days, 3 months, a call for general elections. Then the APNU, which also said that they will support the AFC's motion, called for a local government election. And as you may or may not know, they're having protest actions across the country and to support this call. So, are we on the page of their calls for 2 elections now? Great. Now, with that, you said earlier that the people are prepared for 1 elections, and whichever one the PPP supports, that is, and they can influence the people for that 1 election. Are you saying then that the PPP will only be going for 1 election and not both elections?
Well, I don't know about our Constitution or the Representation of the People's Act can facilitate 2 elections being held in 1 year. I don't know that. I doubt it. And this has never happened in our country, political or electoral history. You see? So, there's a lot of political gaffe taking place around the place on all these possibilities. But then we have to go according to what the laws say and what the Constitution says at all times. You see? Nothing is wrong with, brainstorming and talking around issues and so on. That is normal, in political societies and democracies as ours. But in the final analysis, the AFC and the APNU will have to decide. The dates are coming closer. They will have to decide what is it they are desirous of having. No confidence motion or one of the 2 elections. I said the PPP is watching. We are working at the same time. We're not just simply watching what is going on. We are working in the meantime for any one of the 2 elections. But it would seem to me that the APNU is more geared and gearing itself more for local government elections rather than a general election. Why I wouldn't be able to answer that, probably Mr. Granger would. But, one must ask the question, why is the AFC pushing for a general election? They hope they would win it?
Yes.
That's what we should ask Mr. Shotman. Why is he pushing for a general elections? Is he hoping he will win those elections? No, I mean, Ramjatan and others. Is it they're hoping that they would win those elections?
Okay, a follow-up on the same talk about elections.
What do you think?
I'm not sure. I'm just a simple journalist writing what everybody says. No, a follow-up on the same election talk. This last press conference that APNU had, Mr. Commissioner Felix, Mr. Felix, said that you're a blunderer, you're a well-known blunderer, and your latest analysis that the opposition is divided is another blunder you've made. Also, with that in collaboration with the fact that there have been the no confidence motion against you and stuff, would this influence, if there's a possibility that you're elected as your party's leader for the next upcoming election, would these actions and calls influence your decision to accept nomination to be the presidential candidate for
Madam,
the party?
Winston Felix would be the last man on earth for me to pay attention to. The man is a Johnny-come-lately in politics. There's nothing Felix can teach me about politics. I've been in it too long. I've suffered in politics. I've grown up in politics. I don't want to go to the extent about DNA and politics. But trust me, I wouldn't bat an eyelid at anything that Felix says. I think he should look himself in the mirror when he's talking about blunders. I also note that he said his party is taking what I said seriously. And I'm happy for that. I'm very happy that he's taking what I said seriously. He better had.
And sir, so the no confidence motion would not be an influence either
On what?
on you accepting your party's nomination. You had no confidence against you. You accepting your party's nomination as presidential
Listen to me.
candidate.
That no confidence motion was merely a political ploy Granger said in the parliament that he doesn't have to wait on any results from a commission of inquiry to condemn the sitting Minister of Home Affairs. But I can only repeat what one great leader in Latin America once said. Condemn me if you wish, but history will absolve me. I have no time in my political life for the likes of Mr. Granger or Mr. Felix. I've survived under tougher times and tougher leaders in the PNC than Granger and Felix and Harman and this bunch of Johnny-come-latelys. My time is with the PPP, supporters of the PPP, and my colleagues in the PPP, as well as my family and my 2 grandchildren.
Two final questions from me, Mr. Rowe.
All right, just you continue on the same thing, Dennis?
Mr. Rowley, to what extent is the PP willing to negotiate with APNU to have local government elections instead of national elections?
Negotiate.
Yes. Discuss, hold the talks, but I prefer negotiate.
I am not prepared to comment on that matter. The
Are
most
there
I,
pre-
the most I can do is give you a bright smile on that.
But preliminarily, is there any communication between the two groupings with respect to?
Not with the PPP, not with the PPP as a party. I cannot speak for the government, what may be happening at that level, but as far as the PPP is concerned, no, I don't, there's no such situation arising as far as I'm
Would
aware.
that be a good thing? Would that be a good way to do it?
The PPP has always been open to discussions, exchange of views with all the social and political forces in Guyana.
No, this particular matter of whether you should go to local or national.
No, well, I think the leadership of the party is the one at the body that would sit and determine such matters. So far, there hasn't been any offer or any communication to us that anyone is interested in engaging in any discussions, negotiations of that type with the People's Progressive Party. If such a situation was to arise, the party leadership will obviously discuss it and come to a conclusion.
Would you be willing to reach out? If they don't reach out, would you be willing to reach out to APNU to discuss that as an option?
But if you read our statements, you know, you will see where our direction is. So when we speak, we don't only, you know, speak to our supporters, we speak to everybody in Guyana.
Yes.
Yes. Two final questions from me, sir. The AG report is out and it's supposed
The
to
who?
the Auditor General report. Auditor General? Yeah,
Mhm.
great. It's out, it's supposed to be handed over tomorrow. But preliminary report is that this is focused on that saying that the government continues to access contingency fund in breach of the law. What is the PPP's views on this?
That what is a breach of the law?
Yeah, that the government continues to access contingency fund, the contingency fund in breach of the law.
I think that question we better answer at Dr. Lunchen's press conference.
Yeah, hold on.
Oh, well, I don't know about that. He misses them from time to time, but I don't think they've been completely suspended.
All right.
Okay, and final question, how would you respond to accusations that the police force does not understand the FMA Act, yet SOCO was established to help the fight against money laundering?
Mr. Greenidge is at sea on a ship without a rudder. That would be my response.
That would be your response?
Yes.
And you don't have any take, sorry, Mr. Wadley from the Sovereign. So you don't have any take, as the Minister of Home Affairs, sorry, not the General Secretary, if you don't mind answering, you don't have a take on any of the criticisms that Mr. Greenwich had in relation to SOCO and the FIU?
My answer is what I just gave. The man is at sea on a ship without a rudder. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all very much.
Huh?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Welcome to the PPP Weekly Press Conference. With me here is our General Secretary. Yes, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. The first statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party remains strong in its advocacy for free, fair, and transparent elections in Guyana, and is of the expectation, now that the claims and objections period is behind us, that GCOM will work towards implementing or reinforcing adequate quality control measures to protect the integrity of the data collected over this period. Time and again, the PPP has made calls for GCOM to strengthen its IT department with the employment of a competent and qualified manager to supervise the inputting of data into the NRRDB and the expectation and extraction of the revised voters list and subsequently the final voters list. The party is concerned that this process can be seriously compromised should GCOM fail to act. In this light, the People's Progressive Party welcomes the decision by GCOM to embrace the donor community in safeguarding the electoral process, a call which the PPP strongly represented over the years. The party views the initial steps taken towards soliciting international donors in monitoring the electoral process in Guyana as a positive one, in the right direction towards achieving free and fair elections. The party has noted the latest development whereby GCOM has expressed its intention to employ an IT manager and considerations toward the establishment of a media monitoring unit. With elections looming, be it local or general, this is certainly an encouraging move towards our democracy, to ensure our democracy is strengthened and Guyanese are afforded their rights as stated in the Constitution of the Republic. The party is concerned over the politically orchestrated smear campaigns and character assassinations targeting some of our leaders by certain sections of the media, and is of the hope that the proposed media monitoring unit at GCOM will be established soonest and be allowed to function freely. Further, the setting up of the Joint International Technical Assistance, JITA, to aid the transparency of the entire electoral process is definitely a mechanism the PPP has been lobbying for since the commencement of the registration process. Again, we call for the urgent implementation of this decision and in a timely manner for it to be free from political interference. Meanwhile, party activists and supporters continue their house-to-house work in checking the preliminary list of electors and talking to people on the ground. The PPP is proud of its achievement in checking almost 85% of the PLE so far and will continue relentlessly to ensure that we check all lists and reach out to every single Guyanese. The PPP is also urging GCOM to make adequate use of the information provided by its activists during the objections process. It can be expected that GCOM will seek to continue its field visits to the former homes of persons objected to as being deceased by the PPP and to verify the objections made. Further, visits to institutions which presented signed documents to support objections made with regards to the deceased to verify from those records the authenticity of records submitted. It is GCOM's responsibility to ensure the accuracy of the voters list, and so it must make adequate use of all the legitimate avenues at its disposal to satisfy that objective. The party stands ready to accompany GCOM's officials on all such visits. During the claims and objections period, the PPP had provided evidence to GCOM, which the latter accepted and made a commitment to correct, reflecting persons registered at the same address but were placed on a voters list from different polling units. The party is urging GCOM to check the list of each polling unit using lot numbers and addresses to rectify such inaccuracies and ultimately removing confusion on ED. The PPP wishes to reiterate its commitment to support GCOM in its efforts to have an accurate voters list and in the holding of elections which are free, transparent, and free from fear. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party has noted with interest statements emanated from the Alliance for Change on the question of national unity. It seems that the concept of national unity articulated and embraced by the PPP is now being parroted by the opposition parties. These parties are now sheepishly singing, as it were, from the PPP's hymn book in an attempt to take credit for something they never genuinely cared about. This posture is nothing but another ploy to distract public attention from its internal problems and media attention generated as a consequence of damning allegations made against a senior executive of that party. The PPP calls on the Guyanese people not to be fooled by those who, by their very actions, have been responsible for the rupture of our economic and social fabric by putting roadblocks on a number of key developmental projects and by aligning themselves with forces that have been responsible for the destruction of our democratic, economic, and cultural institutions. These obstructionist tactics employed by the APNU and their loyal bedfellow, the AFC, have resulted in great harm to our people, in particular our young people.